I don't remember that night at all, but I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage on the back of my head, and I had woken up on the concrete twice, and I also had a frontal lobe injury. So it's almost like I got to such severe life or death state. I had to flee the state and kind of take a break from these legal battles and back off and move across the country at 17 in a brain injury and cardiac problems and drop the legal charges in order to kind of save my life.
To focus on you.
Yeah.
And then you found ketamine. I'm Kyle Kittleson. This is Callie the Lab. Welcome to What's Working, your mental wellness show.
Your brain, your body, your mind, your soul. The What's Working show with Callie and Kyle.
My guest today is Jane Farris, who has suffered a traumatic brain injury and also endures complex PTSD, severe anxiety, and chronic pain. And the only thing that has worked for her, ketamine. Jane, thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
You are an avid user of ketamine as a form of treatment. You're not doing it recreationally, you're doing it under the guide of your doctor, and you say that's worked for you.
Yes, it has. It's worked very well, actually.
Awesome. So for people who don't know your story, and there is a lot to your story,
Yes.
What are the events that you remember that led you up to seeking out ketamine as a treatment option?
So I had suffered a traumatic brain injury, but before then, I had been going through trauma for a prolonged period of time, other forms.
From what?
It was an abusive relationship, starting at a young age in middle school. I was in an abusive relationship.
Like a romantic relationship?
Yes.
Got it, okay.
And so when you are young and going through trauma, that's when you can develop c-ptsd, opposed to just PTSD, which is trauma that occurs once or a few times. It's not over years and not when you're young, because that's the developmental stages, And so that's the difference. And that's why I have those dissociation issues opposed to and that's the memory problems. And so I still struggle with that today. And I still have a lot more struggles that I wouldn't have if I were to just have that one brain injury.
And now, how did the brain injury occur?
The brain injury occurred at the very end. Well, not the very, very end, but towards the very end of the relationship.
From the
same
abuser?
Person. Yes.
Wow.
It was the abuser. It was at the end of the 3-4 years. By then I was towards the end of my high school. And I had just got into New York University, 2 weeks actually, after getting in, and I don't remember that night at all, but I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage on the back of my head, and I had woken up on the concrete twice, and I also had a frontal lobe injury. So
you're dating this guy in middle school, and you date him through high school?
Yes, my entire high school I was with him. He wasn't abusive for the first year or so. So that's obviously what drew me in. And no one really saw that coming, really. He seemed great. Star lacrosse player, everything seemed great. And then things changed. And that's when I didn't even know, because I wasn't properly educated. Honestly, my school district was amazing in every other way, but it lacked some forms of education when it came to what domestic violence was, what every other, what even rape was, and what all of these other violent issues were. Bullying even.
Right.
We lacked that.
Is there any conclusion on what happened that night that you suffered the traumatic brain injury? So
there's actually an audio recording from that night. I demanded of him, because once we actually made it back inside I was on vacation with him.
Okay.
And him and his family. And it took a while for us to get back inside. We were walking home just a few doors down from a friend of ours home, and that's when the injury occurred, is when we were on this walk home. It was only a few doors down. And I have no memory of this, but we get inside and he had told me this story of what happened over and over again, but I kept forgetting it seconds later. And he was getting frustrated.
What was the story, or do you remember it?
So I don't remember it. And I kept forgetting the story that he was telling me within seconds. And he was getting frustrated with that, and I was freaking out because I was scared for my life.
Of course.
Because I was in pain. I knew I had hit my head. I had woken up on the concrete twice, and I had a throbbing head, and I was terrified. His dad was an eye surgeon or eye doctor. He was an MD, and he refused to take me to the hospital, refused to wake up his parents, wouldn't let me tell my mother, who was also a medical professional, and wouldn't let me really do anything about it. And I was a minor, he was not, and I was out of town with him. And so I was really afraid, but I couldn't really do anything about it because I was afraid of him as well. And so I basically had no control. And it was a very terrifying situation I was in, but...
And you were 17.
Yes, I was 17 at the time. And so I just kind of didn't know what to do. And since I was 4 hours away from my family, I didn't drive there. I felt powerless. And I just kind of gave up with that. I waited until the next day. His parents were up before us, and they went to go play tennis or something in the morning. They come back, and I have a throbbing headache. And let me backtrack. That same night, I had kept asking him over and over again, what happened? What happened? And at that point, he was getting so frustrated with me. So I was like, okay, fine, let me just take a recording, because he wanted to go to bed. I was like, no, keep me awake for at least an hour, because my mom had trained me, don't go to bed after you hit your head because you might not wake up. And so I was like, okay, please just keep me awake for at least an hour and tell me what happened. And he just didn't want to keep repeating the same story over and over again, same story. And so I eventually was like, let me take a recording of it so I can remember when I wake up, if I wake up. And so you can go to bed, because he wanted to go to bed at 11 p.m.
Right.
And I get a recording from him of what he claims happened. And the doctors now, the recording itself is still very scary, but the doctors, and this is the recording that I thought was true for a long time, the doctors now don't believe that this recording can be 100% true, if even true at all, because they say it's no way possible, based on the severity of my injuries, for me to have just fallen and then have gotten brain bleed from it.
So he's claiming that you fell. Callie, lay down. He's claiming that you fell and hit your head.
Yes, twice.
Right, twice.
Yes,
That happened. But you have no history of falling or passing out or anything like that.
So he's claiming that I just dropped to my knees and then fell forward while walking. Just kind of was walking, said I don't feel good, fell to my knees, and then just went face forward onto the ground while just walking home. And then was leaning against the garage door, and then fell backwards and hit the back of my head, and then was out for several seconds, and then that's how I got my brain bleed. The doctor's like, there's no way that's true.
Got it.
Because realistically, I mean, NFL players, all these people, they get head injuries all the time. They don't suffer brain bleeds that have them out with injuries as severe as mine.
So what happened with him? Was he convicted of anything?
So we were in legal battles for a long time, and it got to a point where it was either my cardiac health and the PTSD and the anxiety and the retaliation and the restraining orders and all this home break-ins and the retaliation from his lacrosse team and the school district and my hometown and the anxiety I was under, because I started to have all this extreme anxiety from the retaliation I was facing from his friends and family. So it was almost like I got to such severe life or death state. I had to flee the state and kind of take a break from these legal battles and back off and move across the country at 17 in a brain injury and cardiac problems and drop the legal charges in order to kind of save my life.
To focus on you.
Yeah. And so that's what I had to do. And I still kind of feel guilty about that, because actually a couple weeks ago when I was readmitted for some cardiac related problems, and then PTSD and mental health problems that I've been struggling with again recently. I came across a recording from court of him admitting to being violent towards me and threatening to kill himself whenever trying to leave him and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, I wish I had actually followed through, because it's like he's out there at college still away with the stuff. And I feel like if I had just been strong enough at that time, which I know I really shouldn't have done this, because if I'd followed through, it was risking my life.
I understand.
So I shouldn't have. But at the same time, it was dangerous for me at that time. But now I'm like, okay, I'm getting better. There's always time to do it.
Well, and look, there are people who are going to hear that, and they're going to have a strong opinion either way.
Yeah.
There are people who are going to say you should take care of yourself, forget him, karma, all that. And there are people who say, no, it's your responsibility to do that. But here's what I've learned on my very short time on this planet. This is your experience.
Yeah.
Nobody else can know what you're going through, because it is your experience.
Exactly. And the thing is I do know that even as far as I did go, is that it's on his record, because he was an adult, that I even said something. Mm-hmm. And so if he were to do something to someone else, it's there that I did do these things. I got a restraining order. I did go through all of that.
It's not like you said nothing and left.
Yeah, so if he were to do something to someone else and it's a he said, she said, there's proof that someone else claimed things.
That's right.
And so someone else isn't going to have to go through so much and try and prove so much later on. So I at least feel good about that.
Yes.
You know?
Well, thank you for sharing that story. That's very brave of you, and we have a lot more to talk about. But if you are in an abusive relationship or know somebody who is, make sure you check out the National Domestic Violence Hotline. All right, Jane, how is your memory today?
My memory today is actually still something I struggle with almost daily, and I don't recognize it in the moment. And I think that's why I struggle with it so much, because it affects a lot of my relationships with people, because I feel like they don't understand that and they take it personally a lot of the time. And so,
but will you remember this later today that you filmed this?
Yes.
Okay.
I've learned a lot of ways to cope with it. I rely heavily, actually, and I hate this, that I have to do this, but a tactic I've learned is that documenting my life, whether that be on social media, journaling, photos, videos, writing.
We even have your iPad here, right?
Yeah, I have an iPad here.
Yeah. So you record a lot of your life, what you do day to day to keep a memory of that.
Yes. In the beginning, I actually used to vlog everything. So my day-to-day life, I'd vlog it. I wasn't posting it. It was just for my life.
Right.
For me. So when I lived in Austin, I vlogged almost constantly. Like between everywhere I was going, I was just a recap of what I just did. And then at the end of the day, I just vlogged again, and I was always watching it. And now it's actually very useful, and I'm like, wow, I totally forgot. Getting bored?
Just settling in.
Okay.
Well, you showed us prior to recording today a voice memo that your mother shared, who's been with you on this journey the entire way through, as every good mother should be. And I wanted to share what your mother said, all of the things that you've tried before you found ketamine. So let's take a listen to that.
Extensive talk therapy, like with Terry, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, weekly massage therapy, muscle relaxants, inversion table and other home pain relief measures like your heating pads and massage tools. You saw numerous doctors of different specialties. So you pretty much tried everything.
And then you found ketamine.
Yes.
Because none of that stuff was relieving anxiety, chronic pain, or anything.
Yeah, so they definitely, some of them helped. Massage helped, but long term, it didn't help. There was one massage, so in Austin, I found an amazing massage therapist. But then when I moved, she wasn't here. She helped me, and I found an amazing therapist, honestly, in Austin. Terry, who was mentioned, she was great, but they couldn't all move here with me.
Of course.
And they weren't long term. solutions to it all. And so it didn't fix everything.
How did you learn about ketamine the first time?
I think it was on YouTube, honestly.
Really?
Because I needed something.
Yeah.
And
you were desperate at this point.
Yes. I can't live my whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm not someone who knows a lot about medicine.
Sure.
I don't like the medical world a lot. I don't like blood. Growing up, I would be at a tennis match. I would get like a paper cut from a tennis ball can and faint. And they'd have to call an ambulance because that's the kid I was.
Right.
It's not because I can't tolerate blood, it's just my response, vasovagal.
Right.
But I was on YouTube and I think I had just been researching it, and so I texted my mom and I was expecting her to respond and be like, "You're crazy." But she had actually been researching it too.
Got it.
And I trust her opinion, and she had been talking to a friend as well about it, and she was on board, and then I was like, okay.
And do you remember that first treatment?
I do. So they prefer not anyone else to be in the room, typically, and at least at that time, because it was before it was more normal of a treatment. Now I get that it's a little bit more normalized, but back when I first started my treatments, it wasn't as normal, and so they actually didn't even want my mom in the room, and she demanded it, and so I remember my first treatment, they were a little bit more careful because I'm small, and so they started it out like pretty low, but then like they realized that I tolerate the medicine very well, especially for someone my size. But I remember seeing my mom, or at least thinking my mom was like swaying back and forth in the corner of the room, which I think is why they prefer not to have anyone else in the room.
Right.
Because I think it can kind of cause like a weird hallucination thing.
Yeah.
So they like to not have anyone else in the room typically.
Well, your mother sent sent you a voicemail with what she said you said during your first infusion treatment and what her experience was watching you get that treatment. And here's that voice memo from Jane's mom. Let's listen.
You have a sense of peace, a relief from pain, and kind of an out-of-body experience. That you're not really aware of where you are. It's a dissociative medicine. It's used for anesthesia so that people aren't aware of what's happening in their body. That's, and maybe some minor hallucinations. The first time you had an infusion, I asked you about 30 minutes after how you felt, and you reached down and you touched your knees and your hips and said, almost in disbelief, "Oh my God, I have no pain." And I said, "Well, how do you feel emotionally?" And you replied, after you thought for a second, and you replied, "I feel at peace and totally content." And it actually almost made me cry because it was the first time you were pain-free in over a year.
And now you've been using ketamine as a treatment, the ketamine infusions, for almost a year. We're coming up on a year here pretty soon.
Yeah.
How has it changed your life?
Yeah, so I actually, now that she like sent me this, I remember that a lot better. So that's how my memory kind of works. So I say I have like no memory, which is a weird thing because I think I can't remember things, and then someone will say something, and sometimes it triggers memories for me, which is amazing because I will think I have no recollection of something, and then my mom or someone will say something, and I'm like, I totally remember that now. Like, it was amazing. Like, I remember thinking like it was kind of like a miracle. Like, it was the first time, like, and yesterday even, because I had my friend Luke with me. I call it my babysitter because I have to bring a babysitter with me, or else, because yesterday after my infusion, I tried to call my own ride home. I pull out my phone to call the Uber with me and my friend, and I open up Waze and I type in I type in my address. Yeah. And I'm like trying to call the Uber. Yeah. I type in my address, and he takes my phone from me and calls the Uber.
So you need somebody with you at these treatments.
Yes, I always.
So you call them a miracle.
Yes, I kind of have called it a miracle drug for me because it's I forget almost whenever I'm not doing the treatments consistently, like before the treatments, and then when I took a break from the treatments when I got too busy or I forgot for a while, like the 6 months when I wasn't doing it, like, cause I was supposed to go in for my follow-up a while ago, and so I was having a lot of pain for a while in between the treatments, and I forget when I'm having my chronic pain that not everyone else lives with this severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
I live with this severe pain every single day.
Yeah, you had something to compare it to.
Yeah, that's like, okay, it's not normal to be in severe pain.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I 18 years old feeling this much pain every single day when that's not normal? Like, I'm talking to my friend, I'm like, are you in like excruciating pain in your hips and knees and neck and everywhere basically? And he's like, no.
Right. How do you feel right now the day after your ketamine treatment?
So I'm feeling like not in excruciating pain. I mean, I'm a little bit sore in my IT bands and my feet, but that's because I've been doing run weight training. So it's like, okay, there's a reason being some soreness, but like not the kind of chronic pain that I'd been experiencing for a few months when I had been in between treatments and before my treatments.
Has ketamine helped your CPTSD?
Yes. And so that's the other thing is like, I feel just so much more positive and like, I feel like life isn't so miserable, if that makes sense. Like, I don't feel so another friend I was with last night says to me is like, I could be so negative Nancy and be like, woe is me, my life sucks. I could be. Right. Yeah, like so many people are like, my life is so terrible. Like, because I mean, yeah, awful things have happened to me. Awful things happen to people all the time. Like, yeah, a lot of unfortunate things have happened to me, honestly. But also, my life is amazing, to be honest. Like, I have a lot to be very grateful for. And, like, I am taking advantage of that. Yeah. And I make the best of it. And it sucks that, like, even, like, last month I was, like, in the ER, wearing a Holter monitor, like, have medical problems still to this day. And it's like, I could be dwelling on that, like be all negative and crying about it, you know? But no, I'm like having fun, hanging out with friends, like being positive. Yes. Instead of like just being down in the dumps.
And you're advocating for yourself, and you're going online and you're finding other treatments that may work after you've tried traditional methods. And that is being your own self-advocate, and that is the common thread to anybody who has struggled with mental health, or in your case, mental health issues and physical issues. And even though mental health oftentimes is a physical issue, but you have advocated for yourself through that and found something that works for you. And that is applaudable and amazing, and you should be very proud of that. If you know somebody who has PTSD, or if you yourself has PTSD, make sure you check out one of MedCircle's original series on the topic. Here's a sneak peek from one of them. Take a look.
When people are doing trauma-focused work, it's painful and it's difficult. But I mean, listen, some of the preliminary studies suggest you might start seeing some shifts in months.
In months?
In months, okay. Yeah. And so, you know, so you can start seeing shifts in 3 to 4 months, but there has to be tremendous trust and rapport between the client and the therapist, the trust being key. They have to feel safe with the therapist. And then to be able to do that work, to be able to stay in the moment, to really be able to talk about that and not get swept away in it. It takes time. And to be able to monitor it, to be able to also simultaneously monitor other risk situations, like stuff around, like I said, eating disorders, substance use disorders, other disorders of regulation in essence. Is a person living a life that's full and rich and healthy and full of self-compassion and the things we need to be okay? If that's happening, have they forgotten the trauma? No. Is a person going to say, I'm good.
It's like it never happened.
It is a vulnerability. It's an old injury. It's something that's there. And what we've got to remember is life is a story. And in that story called life, things happen. Person's going on, and then they may fall in love and get married. And that can be a place where they feel vulnerable. They may go on to have their own children. And having been abused as a child, having to take care of their own child can bring up feelings. So this is where therapy, to me, is always an ongoing conversation. It doesn't mean you're on the couch twice a week for 25 years, but that if there's a place you can go to, that it may be that when these particular episodes of life come up again, that you have the tools or even the therapy to go back to help shore you up at those times.
You can watch that series and more at medcircle.com. Jane, great talking to you.
Thank you.
Great talking to you. Now you have
You
your
too.
own series on MedCircle as well, so we'll make sure to link to that below this video. You are a hero. Do not forget it. Guys, thank you so much for watching this, and make sure you check out the links below this video to learn more about Jane and all of the topics that we discussed today. Callie, you did it, girl. Another show in the books. Appreciate you, Callie. I'm Kyle Kittleson. Remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.